Hello everybody, welcome to Tactic Techniques. Kubernetes interview questions and answers. What is Kubernetes? Kubernetes is a container management system developed in the Google platform. Kubescheduler, it assigns nodes to newly created pods. EKD cluster, a simple, distributed key-value storage which is used to store the Kubernetes cluster data, such as number of pods, their state, namespace, API objects and service discovery details. Kube server, it is the front end for the Kubernetes control plane. Kubernetes API server is the central management entity that receives all REST requests for modifications to pods, services, replication sets/controllers and others, serving as front end to the cluster. Kube Controller Manager, the Kubernetes Controller Manager is a collection of controllers bundled within a single binary and run in a single process. Cloud Controller Manager, it is structured using a plugin mechanism that allows different cloud providers to integrate their platforms with Kubernetes. Kubernetes Node Components. Kubelet, the main service on a node, regularly taking in new or modified pod specifications, primarily through the Kube server, and ensuring that pods and their containers are healthy and running in the desired state. This component also reports to the master on the health of the host where it is running. Kube Proxy, a proxy service that runs on each worker node to deal with individual host subnetting and expose services to the external world. It is a network proxy that runs on each node. It maintains network rules, which allow for network communication to pods from network sessions inside or outside of a cluster. Various types of pods. Replica set, the default, is a relatively simple type. It ensures the specified number of pods are running. Deployment is a declarative way of managing pods via replica sets. Includes rollback and rolling update mechanisms. Daemon set is a way of ensuring each node will run an instance of a pod. Used for cluster services, like health monitoring and log forwarding. Stateful set is tailored to managing pods that must persist or maintain state. Job and cron job run short-lived jobs as a one-off or on a schedule. Different types of Kube Controller Manager. Node Controller, responsible for noticing and responding when nodes go down. Replication Controller, responsible for maintaining the correct number of pods for every replication controller object in the system. Endpoints Controller, populates the endpoints object. Service account and token controllers, create default accounts and API access tokens for new namespaces. Different types of Cloud Controller Manager. Node Controller, for checking the cloud provider to determine if a node has been deleted in the cloud after it stops responding. Route Controller, for setting up routes in the underlying cloud infrastructure. Service Controller, for creating, updating, and deleting cloud provider load balancers. Volume Controller, for creating, attaching, and mounting different service types in Kubernetes. ClusterIP exposes the service on an internal IP only. This makes the service reachable only from within the cluster. This is the default type. Node port exposes the service on each node's IP at a specific port. This gives the developers the freedom to set up their own load balancers, for example, or configure environments not fully supported by Kubernetes. Load balancer exposes the service externally using a cloud provider's load balancer. This is often used when the cloud provider's load balancer is supported by Kubernetes, as it automates their configuration. External name will just map a CNAME record in DNS. No proxying of any kind is established. This is commonly used to create a service within Kubernetes to represent an external data store. What are Kubernetes pods? Pods are the smallest execution unit in a Kubernetes cluster. Define heapster in Kubernetes. It is a metrics collection and performance monitoring system for data that are collected by the kubelet. Namespace in Kubernetes. Namespaces in Kubernetes are used for dividing cluster resources between users. It helps the environment where more than one user spread projects. Define Ingress network. Ingress network is defined as a collection of rules which allow permission for connections into the Kubernetes cluster. What are the tools that are used for container monitoring? Heapster, CAdvisor, Prometheus, InfluxDB, Grafana. Define headless service. Headless service is defined as a service that uses IP address, but instead of load balancing, it returns of associated pods. What are the important components of node status? Condition, capacity, info, address. Mention the list of objects of Kubernetes. 1. Pods. 2. Replication sets and controllers. 3. Jobs and cron jobs. 4. Daemon sets. 5. Distinctive identities. 6. Deployments. 7. And stateful sets. What are federated clusters? Federated clusters, multiple clusters that are managed as a single cluster. What are secrets in Kubernetes? It is sensitive information like login credentials of the user. They are objects in Kubernetes that store sensitive information like username and password after performing encryption. What are the labels in Kubernetes? Labels are a collection of keys that contain some values. The key values are connected to pods, replication controllers, and associated services. Node affinity is a set of rules used by the scheduler to determine where a pod can be placed. The rules are defined using custom labels on nodes and label selectors specified in pods. It ensures that pods are hosted on particular nodes. Node selector provides a very simple way to constrain pods to nodes with particular labels. Pod affinity ensures two pods to be co-located in a single node. Config maps ideally stores application configuration in a plain text format. Ingress controller co-exposes HTTP and HTTPS routes from outside the cluster to services within the cluster. Traffic routing is controlled by rules defined on the Ingress resource. Ingress does not expose arbitrary ports or protocols, exposing services other than HTTP and HTTPS to the Internet. Replication Controller. It is responsible for managing the pod lifecycle. It is responsible for making sure that the specified number of pod replicas are running at any point of time. Replica set. It ensures how many replica of pods should be running. Replication Controller only supports equality-based selector, whereas the replica set supports set-based selector. Deployment strategies. Recreate. This feature will kill all the existing RC and then bring up the new ones. This results in quick deployment, however it will result in downtime when the old pods are down and the new pods have not come up. Rolling update. This feature gradually brings down the old RC and brings up the new one. This results in slow deployment. Labels. Labels are key value pairs which are attached to pods, replication controller and services. They are used as identifying attributes for objects such as pods and replication controller. They can be added to an object at creation time and can be added or modified at the runtime. Selector. It allows us to select Kubernetes resources based on the value of labels and resource fields assigned to a group of pods or nodes. 2 type of selectors. Equality-based selectors. It allow filtering by key and value. Matching objects should satisfy all the specified labels. Set-based selectors. It allow filtering of keys according to a set of values. Persistent volume, PV. It's a piece of network storage that has been provisioned by the administrator. It's a resource in the cluster which is independent of any individual pod that uses the PV. Persistent volume claim, PVC. The storage requested by Kubernetes for its pods is known as PVC. The user does not need to know the underlying provisioning. Types of Kubernetes volume: empty dir, host path, GCE persistent disk, AWS elastic block store, NFS, Flocker, Azure disk volume, RBD. Kubernetes networking in CNI, Flannel, Calico, WeaveNet, Cilium. Kubectl rolling update, performs a rolling update on a replication controller. Kubectl rollout, it is capable of managing the rollout of deployment. Rollout history, rollout pause, rollout resume, rollout status, rollout undo. Kubectl scale, it will scale the size of Kubernetes deployments. Replica set, replication controller. Kubectl set image, it updates the image of a pod template. Kubectl top node, it displays CPU/memory/storage usage. Kubectl set resources - it is used to set the content of the resource. Egg, $kubectl set resources deployment nginx c equals nginx limits equals CPU equals 100 meters, memory equals 256 MB. Kubectl rolling update minus performs a rolling update on a replication controller. Kubectl get, this command is capable of fetching data on the cluster. Kubectl expose, this is used to expose the Kubernetes objects such as pod, replication controller, and service as a new Kubernetes service. Kubectl exec, this helps to execute a command in the container. Kubectl describe, describes any particular resource in Kubernetes. Kubectl attach, this attaches things to the running container. $kubectl attach 123,456 to 7,890 nginx container. Kubectl autoscale, this is used to autoscale pods which are defined such as deployment, replica set, replication controller. $kubectl autoscale deployment gumin equals to max equals 10. Kubectl config set, sets an individual value in kubectl config. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel.